Howdy, and welcome back to the Texas Bucket List. You know, when it comes to a dairy, usually green pastures and wide open meadows is what comes to mind. That is unless that dairy is way out in West Texas. Our next stop is Licon Dairy in El Paso, where they've been producing a particular type of cheese since the 1950s. For Texans that have never been to El Paso, most think of it as a city in the middle of the desert that's got a mountain smack dab in the middle of it. Well, you're not wrong, but if you venture toward the border and head southeast of town, you'll find a few farms and ranches making use of every drop of the Rio Grande they can get. That includes the Licon Dairy, which has been sitting in San Elizario since the 60s.
Well, back then there was more agriculture here, a lot of farms, and they planted a lot of alfalfa and all. The farming was a lot more than what you see now.
Angel Licon and his family are continuing a tradition that started with his grandmother, Isabel Martinez, making asadero cheese on the stove back in the 50s.
We like to say it's a taste of history because we've been here for so long.
In the 60s, his grandfather Eugenio Licon Sr. got the wheels turning on cheese making by starting the Licon Dairy.
They started off with only, I think it was about like 10 cows, and they would milk them by hand. Just enough milk to produce enough to make enough cheese, just to sell within that day. Slowly and gradually, my grandfather started growing his herd, purchasing a little bit more of the cattle, a little bit more, to where at the end he was milking about 125 here in San Elizario.
Today, the cows are gone, and in their place is a petting zoo that's very popular with El Pasoans, but the cheese making is still their bread and butter.
Every day they gotta pasteurize all the milk.
Okay.
Because it's all raw milk. I started making cheese as early as high school, so I was 14 years old. On the weekends I'd come in and get up at 4, and I did that for many years. So this vat we do anywhere from 12 to 15 bats a day. We'll get
15 of those a day?
Yes, sir. So wow. We get about 3 of these. Roughly we're processing anywhere from 400 to 500 pounds of cheese daily.
Today, the Licon family is led by Angel's father, G. They both fondly reminisce about their time working with their dad and grandfather. But so does another employee named Hector, who's practically family.
So he's been with my grandfather for years. ¿Cuántos años, Héctor? ¿Cuántos años tiene? 45. Oh, 45 years.
45, wow. You've been here longer than I've been alive.
Not many people that are going to work like him, you know, and he doesn't miss a day. It's very rare that he calls in.
He's got this process down.
He's got it down, so.
Hector's arm is awesome. It's like Popeye, man.
Just the right arm, too.
Yeah. Making the cheese is a quick process once it's cooked down, and the majority of the cheese is turned into slices.
From the stove, it'll then come to this table over here.
Okay.
This is where they'll press each 1 ounce ball, so they gotta make sure that each ball comes to about 1 ounce. Each package contains 10 slices, so it's 10 to 12 ounces roughly is what we're trying to get at each package.
So it's making these little, like a cheese slice of asadero cheese, but I mean, do people get confused and think you're making tortillas here or something?
A lot of the time they look in and they think we're making corn tortillas, and that's what initially this machine was made for. We converted it to try and make the asadero, so we've kept the same recipe for 75 years, so we haven't changed anything, and we find out that it's probably the best way to keep it simple, and that's how we're able to have our doors open. They do this every single day, and they're making 500 packages, and there's 10 slices in each one, so you can imagine doing the math.
You guys have to do this 7 days a week?
7 days a week. They do it 7 days a week.
What's crazy about the queso making process is the temperatures these cheese makers have to handle.
So they have to work with it at a very, very hot temperature. If it gets too cold, then the cheese won't spread and it won't make that perfect shape over there. So they have to make sure that they're working fast enough before the cheese gets cold, and then they can't spread it anymore.
Any idea how hot the cheese is?
We've measured, is it like what's the temperature of the cheese? About
170 degrees.
Yeah, they don't have fingerprints either, so they can commit crimes. They don't have any fingerprints.
But this is also the best time to enjoy a little asadero.
So this is probably the best tasting the cheese will ever get when it's directly out of the pot.
Oh man.
That's the freshest it gets, yes.
And what else? It's not overly salty, it's just...
No, and that's the key is when he's straining it, he's trying to get all the excess salt out of it. That's why our whey is a little bit salty. It gives it a mild kick to it.
Making asadero isn't easy cheesy, but continuing the tradition that's been a part of their family for so long is what keeps the Licons coming back every day.
For us, it's just exciting to see that the legacy is continuing through generations. even though it's a lot of work and it changes through each generation, but we're trying to each instill our mark on the business as the generations pass.